Give a damn about a hater when I feel like it. Not today, not today, not today, not tomorrow. Get out my way.
Yo, what's good, everybody? Welcome to Straight No Chaser. I'm your boy, the Bro-Kage, Petty Pat. And on today's video, we gonna talk about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, featuring my boy, honestly, one of my favorite Spider-Mans, Miles Morales. Honestly, let's keep it a buck. Miles Morales has a better suit than Peter, better powers than Peter. Like, Miles Morales is just better. I don't know. I'm just saying. That's just me. But anyways, before we get into like some of the things that happened in this movie, I just want to say this movie visually was a 10 out of 10, story 10 out of 10, everything 10 out of 10. This movie, if I had more thumbs than two, I'd get this thing like 25 thumbs up if I could. But yeah, the visuals for this, all the different art styles they had in this movie that they had to blend together to make it look like it made sense and to make it look like it went with everything else that was in there. There's so many different art styles in here. As an artist and as someone who draws as myself, it was very visually pleasing. So I enjoyed the fuck out of this movie. And we already got a date and the title for the next movie, Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse. And I'm pretty sure it's either the 24th or 29th of March next year, 2024. So that's less than a year right there. We already getting the third part. I don't know if it's the final movie, but we already getting the third part of this movie in less than a year. And to keep it a buck, this movie visually looks like they should have taken a lot more time than they did to make this movie. Because like, it seems like there were so many intricate parts, so many different art styles, so many different visuals that you had to make up. It seems like the time they made this movie and for how great it is, it baffles me. But this movie is beautiful in every way, shape, or form. I love this movie. I saw it twice, just so y'all are aware, back to back. I went and saw it the Thursday it came out, and then I turned around and saw it again the same Friday. But yeah, let's get in to what happened in this movie. So we pretty much start the story out the same, like, you know, my name is, but this time we start off with Gwen telling her story essentially, and we get to see a little bit of we get to see into Gwen's universe, and we get to meet Gwen's dad. We get to see all the events that transpired upon her, like the death of her Peter Parker. And let me tell you, man, Gwen's backstory is tragic, man. She lost a lot of people while being Spider-Gwen. So, like I said, I like that we are getting a large peek into Gwen's backstory. She apparently is feeling really lonely since leaving Miles in the last movie and things of that nature. So I feel like this is also kind of a journey for Gwen to find herself in this movie as well. She also blames herself for her Peter dying because if you don't know, her Peter was her best friend and her Peter was bullied mercilessly. It ended up becoming the Lizard Man. So that's what happened, and she stopped him, and eventually he ended up dying. Again, funny, Gwen's dad is also a cop like Miles' dad, so that's also awesome. We also see her dad get a call about an attack at the museum, and she ends up fighting an alternate universe Vulture who looks like he comes from the Da Vinci time. During that fight, we also get the first appearance of Spider-Man 2099 and Spider-Woman. So the other Spider-Woman, I forget her name, Jessica Drew. And Jessica Drew is actually pretty dope in this. She drives a motorcycle. She's a preggers Spider-Woman. But anyways, Jessica Drew was alright in this. Apparently when they shut down Kingpin's Collider in the last movie, they still left a hole open in the multiverse for guys like alternate universe Vulture, Rhino, whatever to pop up. At the end of the fight with Vulture, Gwen gets cornered by her father in the museum, and he's ready. He has her dead to rights. He's ready to shoot her because he believes Spider-Woman is a murderer because he thinks Spider-Woman Gwen killed Peter Parker on purpose. So he doesn't even really know the full backstory. He don't know what transpired beforehand. Why Gwen hasn't told him, I don't know. But anyway, he has her dead to rights. And she goes to try to explain. He fires off his gun in the air, which of course will get anybody to stop. So eventually she has to do the unthinkable. She has to unmask herself and reveal that it's her to her father. Gwen's father, which surprised me, kind of like seemed like he was scared of her and kind of turned his back on her because I guess he just didn't really know how to process the whole thing, like with his daughter lying to him and being Spider-Woman this whole time and him hunting her down as a criminal because he believes she killed Peter Parker, which, hey, like I said, he doesn't know the full story. He don't know what happened. He wasn't there when Peter turned into a giant lizard. Again, all context. You could just ask. Anyways, now we fast forward to Miles. We see the Spot, and we also get to see who is going to be the villain. We see Spot. Spot is now robbing a local bodega that, he's trying to test out his powers, because he can't work in the real world anymore because, lo and behold, he turned into the Spot. So apparently the Spot blames Miles Morales for him basically becoming a villain, and apparently he was in the room during the Kingpin's collider exploding in the first movie, and I think apparently he was in that chase scene in the last movie during the Doc Ock scene, and Miles threw a bagel at him. So, yeah, we get to see that. He is also the one who created the spider that bit Miles. We also get a bit of information about that spider. That spider is not from Miles's universe. I'll dive a little bit more into that later on in the road. But anyways, so we see the Spot bouncing through universes as he's fighting Miles, and the Spot figures out later that he can travel. After his fight with Miles, he figures out later that he could travel between the multiverse, the universes, or the spiderverse, whatever you want to call it. We get to see Spot pop up in a bunch of different universes as he's figuring out his powers. Like we get to see the store owner from Venom. She was not fazed by the Spot popping up. She treated that man like he was nothing new because, of course, she got Venom and Eddie. We see him pop up at Lego Spider-Man world. So we got to see Lego Peter Parker, and he pops up in, I think, like an old comic booky style Spider-Man world as well. So that was pretty awesome seeing all those different types of universes within the Spot just bouncing around. I think he doesn't pop into any of the other Spider-Mans. He doesn't pop into Tobey's, Andrew's, or Tom Holland Spider-Man at all. Miles misses a big event for his father. His father is being promoted to captain of the police force. Again, this plays significance in the story. I'll get into that later. But finally, Gwen and Miles reunite, and she fills Miles in on what she's been doing. She's actually not there to see Miles. She was sent here to get info on the Spot. So she's already basically starting off reuniting with Miles by lying to him. There's a big reason why she's lying to Miles throughout this whole movie. Anyways, like I said, the visuals and the music for this movie were fucking amazing. And I just found out one of my favorite producers. Well, I didn't just find out. I found out one of my favorite producers made the entire soundtrack for this movie, Metro Boomin, and he also appeared in the movie as one of the Spider-Men or women. So they finally catch up to Spot. He has destroyed a building while trying to enhance his powers because Spot's whole thing is basically making Miles pay. He's going to take everything from Miles like Miles took from him. So essentially he's jumping through universe. He had to make himself more powerful and get more spots so he could jump through multiple universes. He's trying to find a bigger collider by jumping through each of these universes and going to the Alchemax where the collider was. And he finally, so we see that, and Jessica Drew pops back up, Spider-Woman, and she's basically asking Gwen, like, where's the Spot? Like, where was the villain I sent you to track? And she essentially tells the truth. Spot stepped out for a minute. So Gwen has to leave, and she opens her portal up. Miles is there the whole time in his invisible mode, and he's watching and hearing everything transpire. They do not want Miles involved in the whole spider clique and coming to help, because there's a big reason why Miles can't be involved. But anyways, Miles being Miles, he jumps through the portal because he wants to help his friend. He wants to help Gwen. We fast forward, Miles goes through the hole, and we end up in Manhattan, which is now basically Mumbai, which is essentially Mumbai. So then we get introduced to Spider-Man India, which by far, Spider-Man India like stole the show. And then Spider-Man India was the man. I loved every second of his appearance. He was not my favorite Spider-Man to pop up in this movie, by the way. I'll get to my favorite Spider-Man in a minute, but how he used his webs and everything, he kind of used like a wrist gauntlet or something and shot his webs and kind of used that as a weapon. It was cool. It was cool. It was different. I liked seeing all the different ways that they used their web shooters and all the different types of webs they had. Go through the scene where Miles is like essentially there to help. He gets introduced to Spider-Man India. And of course, there's an Alchemax in there, and the Spot finally finds a big enough collider for him to make himself all powerful, like most villains in any movie, really. So we go through, there's a whole fight. Spot achieves, so we go through, Spot breaks into the Alchemax in Mumbai and essentially basically breaks into the collider room to achieve his goal to make himself more powerful. They try to stop him at first, but it does not work. He puts up a shield blocking Spider-Man India, Spider-Gwen, and Miles out of the room. So Miles has been learning new tricks with his power. So Miles has learned to absorb energy with his venom and power. So he tries absorbing the shield, and as he's absorbing the shield, we get the first appearance of my favorite Spider in the whole movie, Hobie Brown, aka Spider-Punk. This dude was awesome. I don't know if it was his look. I don't know if it's just how he spoke. It was just, Spider-Punk was just pure awesomeness for me. I enjoyed him from the moment he popped into the screen, and his art style was dope. Like in each scene, he was never one color. He had like the old school, like, I don't even know how to describe his art style really. Like it's like the old school rocker magazine-ish style look. I don't know, but anyways, his art style was freaking nuts. He was never one color in any scene. Like one moment he'd be gray, one minute he'd be like his regular color, one minute he'd be blue. Like it was just, I don't know. Like I said, the visuals and art for this movie were just top tier. But we get through that, and they're chasing. Of course, they keep calling the Spot villain of the week, which is pissing him off the entire time, and he hates that he's being considered a joke. So he gets to the collider. They last minute stop him with a web, of course, trying to make him like stop and reason with him, trying to say, we don't think you are a loser. You're not a villain, or just a villain of the week, whatever. He's like, it's too late for that now. Boom, chops the web, goes into the collider, absorbs all the black matter energy into his body, and he becomes basically OP as fuck. He now eventually shows Miles like their future, like what's going to happen in his future and how it's going to transpire. So then we go into that, and we get a whole like fight scene where essentially Alchemax is deteriorating, and one of the pieces of the building starts to fall and crush the crowd, or almost crush the crowd. So it's up to the 4 spiders to stop it. And this was an awesome scene. Like just this whole entire scene, from the bridge to the just, man, I can't say how much. Like I really can't say how much the visuals for this movie were all god tier. Like it was just amazing. But anyways, we get through, and we find out Miles ends up stopping a very important event, which they call a canon event, which I found dope, because they kind of used it as like, when they say canon event, they kind of say like, oh, they're using it as, oh, like this is an event that is canon in every Spider-Man's story. Like this event happens no matter what across the Spider-Verse. So I kind of like that they kind of used it like canon, if you get what I'm saying. But so they end up basically stopping that canon event, which then causes Mumbaten to basically get wiped out of the universe because that canon event needed to happen for that universe to stay intact. All right, so we fast forward, we see Miguel, Spider-Man 2099, call all of them basically back to HQ. And this is where we get to see a lot of different spiders pop up. Like we get to see the spider buggy pop up, which they call Peter Parked Car. We see Scarlet Spider, Ben, who is played by none other than Andy Samberg. So we get a lot of different spiders. I can't even begin to name all of them that appear in this freaking scene. But anyways, Miles is walking through. Now, I've noticed with Miguel, Spider-Man 2099, he's very, like, weird. But he also is not like your typical Spider-Man. He didn't get bit by a radioactive spider. He had got, like, he's part spider and something else. Is weird. I would have to look up and then re-explain his powers. I had it explained to me, but I forgot. Damn ADHD. Anyways. But, we get to this scene and we see Miles is meeting with Miguel, and you know things are not going well. We also then find out that the Spider-Verse is linked all together. Every Spider-Man is linked story-wise all together, and there are particular events in the Spider story that happens to every Spider-Man across the Spider-Verse. That's what links them together. So these canon events that are happening and that they're trying to keep happening need to happen for essentially the Spider-Verse to stay intact, for all of them to stay connected. So we find out that these canon events are like essentially people they care about dying. So like Mbaten, it was supposed to be Spider-Man India's girlfriend's father, who is essentially it's the captain of the police force, ends up dying. So if your Spider-Man is a cop, dad's father or whatever, if your Spider-Man's father is a cop, he'll probably eventually get promoted to captain, and there'll be a canon event which leads to him dying or someone else who was significant in your life dying, like Uncle Ben for Toby and Andrew. So we find that out, and we find out that Miles's dad is supposed to die. And this, of course, sets Miles off. We found out the real reason they called him there. They called Miles there to essentially jump this man so they could keep him there and essentially let his father die. Like, y'all expected this man really not to go save... Like, y'all didn't expect this man to go save his father at all. Like, that's ridiculous. But anyways, we see this whole scene, and they're trying to basically calm Miles down because he's pissed. Like, yo, y'all are trying to stop me from saving my father, whatever. Miles eventually breaks out, and we get this insane chase scene through headquarters, through the Spider headquarters, where Miles is just basically ducking and dodging every Spider-Man known to man. So this was an interesting one to me. So we get to a part in this chase, and Miles busts into this room, and one of the spiders is hanging from the ceiling. He's like, "Stop, guy, there's nowhere else for you to go." And Miles jumps out of the window. He's like, "My bad, guys. There was some place for him to run." It's come to find out that spider was Metro Boomin himself. So that was awesome that Metro Boomin also made an appearance in the movie as one of the spiders. Another good dope-ass appearance we got a cameo from Donald Glover from Tom Holland Spider-Man, because as you know, in Tom Holland Spider-Man, Donald Glover plays Aaron Davis, Miles' uncle. And not only does he appears in Prowler costume. So that was pretty fucking dope. Also find out they've caught multiple, like I said, with Donald Glover popping up, we find out that there's multiple villains that they have caught that they call anomalies. And they send them back home with this thing called the Go Home machine. And oddly enough, to me, the little robot that comes out of the Go Home machine, maybe it's just me, but it looks like the machines from the Matrix. So maybe, I don't know. Somebody tell me if they didn't think the same thing. But anyways, they use this thing called the Go Home machine, and it basically scans the person's DNA and sends them back to their universe. after this, during this chase scene, Miles is about to get away, and we see Miguel, Spider-Man 2099, just basically like essentially ripping into him. And then we find out why they do not want Miles involved in this. Apparently, Miles is the original anomaly. He was not supposed to be Spider-Man. There's a universe 42, where his spider came from that bit him. Someone did not get bit and become Spider-Man, so now that universe does not have a Spider-Man. Miles was never supposed to become Spider-Man, apparently. So he is the original anomaly. Gwen knew, his mentor Peter B. Parker knew, and they didn't told him. So of course, that sends Miles for a loop. Miles eventually does escape. Miguel, Gwen, and Peter B. Parker, Spider-Man. Speaking of Peter B. Parker, they pay homage to Mary Jane and Peter. They actually have a daughter now, and her name is Mayday. So that was pretty dope. And so, like I said, Miles eventually escapes. He sneaks back into headquarters because basically that was his whole plan, was to lure all the Spider-Men, women, T-Rexes, everything out of the base so he could go back, sneak in, get his DNA scanned, and go home. So he ends up doing that, getting his DNA scan. He goes back home, or we thought. So we get back. He's hurt. He's beat up. He basically is frantically web swinging back to his house, or where he thinks is his house. He best to his apartment, and his mom is there. Of course, he has to cover up his suit. And then he does not know that he is in the wrong universe just yet. So his mom sees him. She's like, "What happened to your hair?" Because in this universe, Miles Morales has his hair braided. So in this universe, we find out he eventually tells his mom he's Spider-Man, and she has no idea what the fuck he's talking about. Like, she's like, "Who? Spider-Man?" She thinks he's cosplaying, essentially, because like I said, Miles was not meant to become Spider-Man. So that universe 42 does not have a Spider-Man. So no one knows who Spider-Man is, what Spider-Man is, none of that shit. He doesn't exist on Earth 42. So Gwen ends up back in Miles' actual universe, and she finds out, oh shit, he's in the wrong universe. We found out in Earth 42, instead of Miles' uncle dying, Aaron Davis, we find out that it was his father who ended up passing, and we see that New York is in a world of crime and it's basically run by the criminals because there is no Spider-Man to save that universe. So we fast forward and we see, like, we hear Gwen talk. We see Gwen talking to Miles' parents, basically telling her like it's his fault that he's not here, blah, 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 blah. They finally figure out, like, she finally figured out that, oh, he's in the wrong universe. Miles finally figures out he's in the wrong universe when his uncle is still alive. And yeah, so follow Miles up to he follows his uncle up to the roof, and then we get to see the appearance of Earth 42's Miles Morales, who we find out later when they have Miles tied up is that universe's Prowler along with his uncle Aaron. This movie ended on a cliffhanger. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that. There are no post-credit scenes. I looked it up. There's not one. There's not two. There are 0 post-credit scenes, so don't worry about having to stay for the credits. But essentially, this movie ended with Gwen saying, oh, she's going to get Miles back with the help of some old friends. We go to the roof, and we see Gwen with all the other Spider-Men and women. We see Penny Parker. We see Spider-Man Noir. We see Spider-Ham. We see Hobie Brown, Spider-Punk, a bunch of different spiders. All these spiders linked up to go save Miles. Essentially, we find out, well, not really find out. They kind of dress it up like Spider-Man 2099 is the bad guy, but it's one of those things where it's like he's trying to do things that's for the greater good, but he's going about it in a shitty and evil way. But I love this movie. This movie was a 10 out of 10. Honestly, I'm going to keep it a buck. I've liked these movies better than the Tom Holland movies. Not shitting on the Tom Holland movies. They are all great. But like these 2 movies alone, I feel like are crushing any of the other Spider-Verse movies. Tom Holland, Tobey Maguire, and Andrew Garfield. I'm sorry. I mean, I stand by what I said when I say Miles Morales is a better Spider-Man. So keep it a buck. Let's step it up. There were no appearances from either Toby, Andrew, or Tom in this movie. Apparently, Sony rejected that idea, which I'm kind of glad for, because you didn't need them to appear in this movie. This movie was already good without them. I feel like putting them in this movie would have just took away from the story and took away from Miles himself. But they did use scenes from their movies, so they are mentioned in the movie at some point in different points in the movies. Like I said, 10 out of 10. If I could give this thing, if I had more than 2 thumbs, I'd give this thing 25 thumbs up. This is 100% a must watch. This is 100% a must watch twice, because honestly, you might miss some stuff the first go around. But I've been listening to the soundtrack as of late. Like I said, the soundtrack that Metro Boomin made for this movie, and it is fucking amazing. Like I said, Metro Boomin is one of my favorite producers. They knocked it out. Sony, you knocked it out of the park with this. Keep it up, please. Keep it up. I have no reason to believe that the third movie is going to be just as good, if not better, than the last 2 movies. And the fact that y'all are giving it to us in less than a year says a lot. So thank you. Thank you from me and from all the Spider-Man fans across the world. Thank you. Well, that's my time, motherfuckers. As always, keep it classy, motherfuckers. Deuces. Bam.